Welcome to the Keystone Education Report, where Pennsylvania leaders come together to address the key issues shaping our schools. Today, we're diving into PSBA's 2026 State of Education Report. 2026 marks the 10th anniversary of the annual report, which looks at some of the most pressing and timely issues facing public education. The report serves as a key benchmark for understanding the condition of Pennsylvania's public schools. It not only tracks key indicators such as student achievement and school finances, but also highlights emerging challenges facing schools, including the adoption and use of artificial intelligence. We're joined today by Kevin Busher and Andy Christ. Kevin Busher is the Chief Advocacy Officer, and Andy Christ is the Senior Director of Education Policy here at the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. Thank you both for being here with us today.
Thank you.
So, since this is the 10th year for the report, what kind of trends have you noticed over the past year?
Well, I think since the report does go back 10 years, I think one of the first things we saw, the report began around the time of the PlanCon moratorium, which PlanCon was the school construction and reimbursement program. The state defunded that program around 10 years ago. And I think since then, there's been kind of a wait and see approach, thinking that the state would refund the program, renovate, revamp the program. But what we've seen since then is it hasn't really happened. In 2019, the program was revamped legislatively, but the state never put funding into the new PlanCon program. So what ends up happening is schools locally are 100% responsible for the cost of any school construction, renovation, projects, things like that. And a lot of schools just simply can't afford to do those projects without some state assistance. So school facilities has really emerged as one of the biggest and most pressing issues facing public education. And I think legislatively, that's something we at PSBA are going to be looking at going into the future.
Kevin, anything from you for trends?
Well, the state has, over the last, I'll say, 5 years or so, really put hundreds of millions of dollars into a school reimbursement, school construction reimbursement, or a school facilities improvement line. And over the last 2 years in particular, a portion of that line has gone to solar for all schools. So we're really proud of the efforts that have gone into that. A lot of our schools have used that program to enhance their buildings. But to Andy's point, we have to do more from the state level. When you try to replace a program like PlanCon with $125 million in the last budget, which ended in November, which was finally settled in November, is really tinkering around the edges at this point. When we talk about school districts like the School District of Philadelphia, which has billions of dollars in school infrastructure needs, 125 million barely covers many of the programs that are needed, the building programs that are needed throughout the Commonwealth.
Andy, you were talking about PlanCon. Can you go into a little bit into that for our viewers who might not know what that is?
Well, the PlanCon program is the state's school construction reimbursement program. And like I said, it was mothballed around 10 years ago. And right around 2019, it was revamped legislatively. It was refined and made more efficient, I guess I'll say. But the state still needs to put money into that program in order to drive it out to schools to be used for construction, renovation, maintenance projects, things like that. Making their buildings more efficient, such as Kevin mentioned, the Solar for Schools program. The school would not be able to get any state financial assistance with not for that Solar for Schools program. So we're really lacking that sort of state funding or state source of money for school facility issues.
So I'm assuming state funding was a huge giveaway that you heard from our school districts. Was there anything else that were large takeaways that we saw from districts?
Well, the two takeaways I have, and the first thing I always look at when I do the State of Education report is the biggest challenges facing schools. And this year it was budgeting. And we had a 5-month state budget impasse, and we still have a lot of uncertainty at the federal level, not only regarding funding, but policy. So it makes it very difficult for school leaders without a full and accurate picture of their finances to plan for the future. And just like all of us in our personal finances, if we don't know what our income's going to be, it becomes very difficult to plan for the future. And that's the situation a lot of our school leaders and our members find themselves in due to factors that go beyond their control. The second thing I like to look at is just what the impact of mandated expenses are on school district budgets. Every year I like to crunch that data, and every year I'm surprised by what I see, because it's really those those costs, those mandatory costs that schools don't really have control over, such as pensions, charter school tuition, and special education, that are driving school district spending increases. And Kevin and I hear a lot in Harrisburg the amount that schools are spending and how much the state is contributing to public education. But if you dig a little deeper and you look at the reasons why schools are spending what they're spending, it becomes a little clearer. And I think it really demonstrates the need for additional state financial support for public education.
Yeah, and those are really good points, Andy. And as we talk about the state's investment in public education, the later we go past June 30th, July 1st, the more impact that has on our local municipalities, our local school districts, and our local taxpayers. Every missed payment carries with it the potential for school districts to have to float a bond or a loan or some form of financial impact on our local communities. So yes, the state has invested. Last year, they put $493 million into the Ready to Learn block grant or the adequacy formula. That impacts a lot of our students, but not if we have to wait 5 months to collect on that. Also, to Andy's point about what's going on at the federal level, this constant CR, continuing resolution atmosphere that we're in lends itself to not knowing what federal grants are going to be available, how we're going to change those grants and the structures of the departments that they come from. That has meaningful impact downstream. So we can fund our schools to the portion that we need to meet the adequacy gaps, but not if we're waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 months to fund them. Also, on the mandates, the underfunded mandates, the mandates that we put into place one budget and then decide not to fund it the next budget, becomes a considerable impact on our taxpayers and on our students and on the staff that have to implement those mandates. So we often talk about unfunded mandates, but we never talk or rarely talk about underfunded mandates. We can't budget in a 2, 3, 4 year cycle. We budget year to year, and that's important. But it's also important to remember that the promises of last year have to be maintained and increased often in the following year and years out when we're budgeting. So it's important to remember that this myriad of mandates, whether it be underfunded, fully funded, or not funded at all, it's important to remember that those are promises that we've made to generations to come of students. So we have to maintain that funding.
On the topic of budgeting, Governor Shapiro did his budget address just about close a month ago. Was there anything there that our members saw as potential issues going into the 2026-27 school year?
Well, the governor's budget address is really the starting of a process that hopefully will conclude by June 30th. We'll see if that's the case, but it's really the starting of a process. It's the governor laying out his roadmap for what he would like to see in a budget. I believe we're concerned about the growth in expenses because that's going to mean that downstream we're either going to have to cut programs or raise taxes or change the way certain things are funded. So we want to make sure that the programs that are in place are able to be funded and funded for the long term. Some great things are, the adequacy funding is still there. We need to see an increase in the BEF, SEF lines, the basic education and special education funding lines. But beyond that, it's really about maintaining the promises of the past and growing some of the concerns to the opening question. The buildings and infrastructures need to be increased and maintained. Those are all important things that we're hearing from our members as we work through this budget process, which will hopefully conclude on June 30th.
And to Kevin's point, these are excellent opportunities to advocate as well. With Governor Shapiro's proposal being the starting point, that means there's still time to influence what ends up in the final budget on June 30th. So there are plenty of opportunities to advocate between now and June.
I know you talked a little bit about special education and what that looked like in the report from our members. What did you see through special education lenses of what they're looking for, what's missing, and how our districts can be advocates both at a district level and beyond to a legislative level?
Yeah, what we're seeing, at the statewide level is a real increase in the number of kids being identified with disabilities and in need of special education. And certainly it's not that we're advocating that we don't need to provide those supports and services, but we have to recognize that those come with additional costs. If they need a full-time health aide, you have to pay that health aide and they accompany the kid wherever they go. So special education does place stress on school districts, both in terms of their budget and staffing. And I think what we're seeing, our schools are getting very creative in how they're addressing these issues. But unfortunately, we definitely need more state and federal funding for special education. I think when you look at it graphically, and the report does this, it really illustrates the problem nicely, where you see that the increases in state and federal funding for special education have maintained relative levels, but the increases in expenditures have really skyrocketed. And that's due in large part because more kids are in special education now.
I think it's also important to state that a lot of the mandates, and maybe we could rename this the mandate episode, but a lot of the mandates come from the federal level. And because the federal government across 40 plus years have woefully underfunded their promise of special ed, it means that the state has to meet that gap. And where the state can't meet the gap, then the local taxpayer has to meet that gap, because those programs have to get funded because the federal government says they have to, and because our local school districts want to ensure that those programs are kept and maintained. But I think it's really important, and I can't stress enough, that a lot of these decisions are not made at the local level. They're made at the federal level and forced upon the state. The state then has to pass that on to the local taxpayer. So we believe that if the federal government were to meet even a minimal increase of that promise, it would have a huge impact on the state coffers when we talk about special education funding.
Well, thank you both so far for your insights. We'll be right back after a brief break for more information.
Excellence isn't just a goal, it's a standard. The Great PA Schools GPS designation honors Pennsylvania public schools that go above and beyond, where rigorous academics, strong community ties, financial responsibility, and resilience come together. Today we're highlighting one of our GPS ribbon recipients, Lower Dauphin School District.
At Lower Dauphin, we're learning more than what's in the books.
We're discovering who we are and who we can become.
We exist to educate,
to engage,
to support, and to inspire. Because every day here is a chance to grow, to try something new, to feel supported,
and to push ourselves further than yesterday.
We are a community, a family,
And a place where every moment matters.
Because here, we're not just learning for today.
we are preparing for tomorrow.
Every Falcon.
Every Falcon, every Falcon, every Falcon,
Every Falcon,
every Falcon,
Every Falcon.
every Falcon, life ready.
We're looking for the next great Pennsylvania school district. Visit greatpaschools.com to share your success story or apply for the GPS ribbon. You're watching the Keystone Education Report.
Welcome back to the Keystone Education Report. We're joined again with Kevin Busher and Andy Christ of PSBA to dive more into the conversation of the 2026 State of Education Report produced by PSBA. Thank you both for being here again. So is there anything that surprised you from the report this year?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise so much as something I'm curious to see in the future. And hopefully this is something we can look at in future State of Educations. But we've noticed the last couple of years that there has been a slight decrease over the years in the number of school leaders citing real challenges with student mental health issues. And what I'm curious to see is whether or not that's because of investments schools have made in mental health programs and supports and services that they're providing, or whether it's because school leaders are kind of burned out or tired of talking about this issue, since it's been happening and on the forefront of everyone's mind certainly since the pandemic. But what we are seeing, though, is school leaders are still reporting significant challenges in both connecting students to those mental health support services that they need and finding providers that their students can use for their mental health needs. So again, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing in the future. But for now, I think that's one of the things that has caught my eye.
Yeah, and to Andy's point, and to the legislature and many administrations now, two administrations, to their credit, they've invested in this line, especially the last year in the budget that was settled in November. It was $100 million invested into our school health, our school mental health and school safety lines. Again, pet peeve of mine that they're combined into one because I think it carries with it a certain connotation. But the investment is there to ensure that both our schools are safe and that our students are receiving the care that they need. And to this point, we're working with multiple organizations to ensure that school mental health isn't just in school, that there's no wrong entry to receiving help that a student might need moving forward. So we're working with community providers, we're working with the counties as they provide human services and mental health care. We believe that it's important that there's no wrong door for entry, whether it be your county, your community, or your school. We believe that it's important, and quite frankly, the legislature and Governor Shapiro have put their money where their mouth is on this topic in particular, and invested in this line over the last 4 years, and prior to Governor Shapiro and Governor Wolf's administration, working in a bipartisan manner to get this line inserted into the school budget and into the school code. So we thank the legislature and the governor for investing and ensuring that this is there year after year moving forward.
And I know Pennsylvania is a huge state. You have everything from rural to suburban to urban schools all over the Commonwealth. Do we see this trend with school safety and security as well as mental health across the entire Commonwealth?
I think, the investment shows that it's needed. It's not an underutilized budget line. It's actually tapped into and overextended every year. So yes, there is a need for mental health care across this Commonwealth. But again, it's not necessarily just mental health in schools. It's making sure that when they go home on the weekend or when kiddos are on summer break, that they're receiving the care and there's continuity of care. As we work through what is really the post-pandemic world of mental health. And I believe the investment that we've seen over the last several years proves that.
Andy, I know you mentioned we've been seeing an increase of mental health since the pandemic. Has it been something that's been fluid throughout the years, or is it just as soon as COVID hit, that's when the spike we saw increased?
No, I think there's always been, leading up to the pandemic, there has been concerns about student mental health, whether that's due to social media usage, other factors that students now deal with that I may not have when I was a youngster. But I think there was a definite sense that mental health was an issue. But I think the pandemic kind of changed everything and pushed it to the forefront. And now schools are on the front lines of dealing with student mental health issues.
And I know student mental health ties in with artificial intelligence too, and a lot of schools are worried about how this is going to take off and what to do moving forward and try to be proactive instead of reactive. What did you both see in the State of Education report that districts are looking for or concerned about with artificial intelligence?
Well, certainly in the report, one thing we wanted to gauge is sort of a sense of how many districts were integrating AI currently into their classrooms and programs. And what we found was a little bit more than half of school districts reported that they were using AI, both in their classrooms and their programs and things like that. And even more districts had programs and offered training to their teachers and students on proper AI usage, which is great. But we also did see school leaders report a number of challenges in integrating AI, things like training their staff on proper use of AI, and things like academic misconduct getting in the way of AI usage. But I do remember quite a few survey respondents pointed to the inevitability of AI, and you're either going to be forced to adapt and get on board, or you're going to be left behind.
This is one of those things where education isn't always on the forefront and the cutting edge. So when we see new trends, we have to sort of get out in front of it before we're reacting instead of being proactive. And I think school districts across the Commonwealth have done a pretty good job of being proactive, knowing that it's coming. We don't know what AI is going to look like 5, 10, even 30 minutes from now sometimes. But this is really one of those instances where school districts need to look at what they're doing locally and what their students need locally and what the trends are globally, and ensure that their policies reflect the needs of their local communities moving forward. So that's the most important thing that I think we can project. We don't have a one-size-fits-all approach to AI. It works in some school districts and might not work in others. So that's important that school districts adopt policies that meet for their needs at that moment, and that we allow for the flexibility and the local control at the legislative level here in Harrisburg to allow our school districts to adapt that way.
Well, we have just a couple minutes left, so I know we talked in the first segment about advocacy. How can PSBA members and public education advocates use this report and their knowledge to advocate for the future of public education in the Commonwealth?
I'll let Andy finish this, but I think from my aspect, public schools represent, the traditional public schools represent almost a little tick over 1.5 million students. That's the largest population of schools, of school students in this report. So it's important, A, to remember why you're there. As a school board member, as a former school board member, my North Star was always the student and the taxpayer. So it's really important that we remember why we are there, and that's for the student. Also, using this report, there's little nuggets on every page. So taking that and applying it to your school district, and then talking to your legislators, your state house, your state senator, not just because they're yours. Even when you disagree with them, there might be a nugget in this report that allows you to go in and say, I never thought about it like this. And I know we might not agree politically, but this is a need of my school district. So use the report and comb through it and look at the best way the data can be used in your school district.
Yeah, one of the main points of the report is to provide a unified sort of set of statewide data, which then can be used in discussions with policymakers in your communities on issues impacting public education. And I think when you combine that statewide perspective with your local perspective, that can be an incredibly powerful and persuasive advocacy tool. Because I do think legislators want to know not only what impacts or what you're seeing at your local school districts, but they want to get a scope of the problem at a statewide level so they can make informed votes and have informed opinions on issues. So I think using the report in that way is going to be very effective for our members.
Absolutely. Do the legislators and other influential leaders in the Capitol know about the State of Education report?
Yes, we'll be delivering this report to them in the next couple weeks once it's officially official, and working with them to pull out some nuggets. Often, some of this data sets will be used in committee hearings, legislative analysis. So it's really important that our legislators read through this, see it, know about it, but also look at trends from previous years and see where the growth and where some of the subtractions are happening throughout the Commonwealth. So this is a really important report. Over the last 10 years, we can see some trends and use that to legislate.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for being here with us today and sharing your insights, and I appreciate your time.
Excellence isn't just a goal, it's a standard. The Great PA Schools GPS designation honors Pennsylvania public schools that go above and beyond, where rigorous academics, strong community ties, financial responsibility, and resilience come together. Today, we're highlighting one of our GPS ribbon recipients, Manheim Central School District.
Hello, I'm Dr. Axe. I get to be the superintendent here at Manheim Central.
Hi, I'm Dr. Flannery, Amy Flannery, and I'm the assistant superintendent at Manheim Central. One of the projects in the elementary that really kind of exhibits this is our 4 Houses project. So in a house, there are pre-K students all the way up through 4th grade students. And they're dedicated to a different character trait each month that they're learning about and sharing about in a way to better the school and larger community of Manheim.
Since at our middle school, we're increasing our encore opportunities for kids. We're looking to add foreign language opportunities for our middle schoolers in the very near future. We try to give our high school kids a lot of voice and choice, so we're looking to add a variety of electives that kids are going to be able to take and flexible scheduling options.
We're super proud of them as they are truly difference makers in our eyes for the future of the community.
We always are looking for unique opportunities, and we always want to make sure that our kids are proud to be Barons. Thank you.
We're looking for the next great Pennsylvania school district. Visit greatpaschools.com to share your success story or apply for the GPS ribbon. You're watching the Keystone Education Report.
Well, thank you both again for being here with us today and sharing your insights about the State of Education Report. And thank you for tuning in to the Keystone Education Report. Today, we took a closer look at the findings of PSBA's 2026 State of Education Report and heard about the challenges and opportunities shaping Pennsylvania's public schools. From finances to artificial intelligence, their insights help us better understand what's happening in districts across the Commonwealth. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the issues, innovations, and voices driving public education in Pennsylvania.